What's good, ladies and gentlemen? So today I'm going to talk about the question, does earning $34,000 a year really place you in the top 1% income earners on planet Earth? So even when I heard this statistic, when I was still working in the financial industry many moons ago, and this statistic was marveled at with wonder by many of my colleagues in my office that had graduated from top universities around the world, like Wharton and Harvard and Stanford. The fact that they just blindly accepted this statistic was mind blowing, because there's again that observation of human behavior in my office with supposedly the best educated, just because they have the top academic degrees, proves my argument again that top academic pedigree often has no relation to level of intellect. And here's why the statistic is so misleading. It really has little weight in the context of income earning around the world. And I am going to break this down for you, why this statistic is so deceitful. A statistic that many of us, I'm sure, have heard of many times over the years. Now, the implication of this statement, at least I believe, in my opinion, the implication of this statement and why it's repeated so often in mainstream media is what caused my colleagues to be blown away when they heard this statistic. They were like, that's incredible that if you make $34,000 a year, that puts you in the top 1% of income earners on planet Earth. Because the implication, I believe, is that compared to everyone else in the world, if you make more than $34,000 a year, because you're earning the same rate as the top 1% of income earners on planet Earth, just shut up and stop complaining about your life. But this interpretation, I'm here to tell you why this interpretation is just not true, despite the numerous times this statistic has been reported by various organizations and published on dozens of internet sites. And there are a number of reasons for the duplicity and deceitfulness of this statement. First of all, the stat never compares apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Most of the people that earn $34,000 a year or more live in modern Western nations, with a great deal of people that earn $34,000 or more a year, residents of nations like the United States, Australia, Germany, France, Italy, the UK, and Canada. That is not representative of the 7.6 billion citizens on planet Earth. However, if you earn $20,000 a year, say in Vietnam or Laos, then your quality of life is likely going to be far better than an American that earns $34,000 that lives in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, or New York. Therefore, because purchasing power of money varies massively in different regions of the world, the figure of $34,000 alone, without any context, which this statistic is constantly quoted by so-called pundits and experts about what really is happening in the world financially. It is meaningless, virtually meaningless. Why would anyone think of a person that is among the top 1% income earners of all people on planet Earth as someone that is poor? Probably not. And this is why this stat is repeated so much. Yet, if you earn $34,000 in Los Angeles, I've lived in LA for 8 years, I guarantee your quality of life is likely to be among the poor in the United States. On the other hand, if you earn $34,000 in Saigon, Vietnam, your quality of life is likely to be much better than someone earning the same amount in Los Angeles. So that's number one, why that statistic alone is meaningless. Secondly, rich people hide their income and their wealth. You know, whenever we hear the Fortune list of the 500 wealthiest people in the world, that doesn't include the 500 wealthiest people in the world, because they all hide their income in tax shelters and they all hide their wealth. So this is not speculation, but a fact. In fact, you won't have any of the top global banking families on that list. You won't have many of the oil sheiks in the Middle East. You won't have any of the dictators in Africa on that list, but they are far richer than Carlos Slim or whoever they say is the wealthiest person in the world. In 2012, Reuters estimated that rich people had squirreled away $32 trillion of wealth in offshore tax-free havens. Again, if you cannot understand, and most of us can't understand even the difference between a million and a trillion, even though like a trillion is a million, That amount is staggering, the difference between $1 million and $1 trillion. $1 million you could fit in $100 notes in a duffel bag and carry it out. $1 trillion, you would need an entire football pitch, and you would need pallets stacked twice as high as a 6-foot man for the length of a football field. It would take you years to carry that out in a duffel bag, whereas $1 million you could carry out. They have $32 trillion estimated squirreled away in offshore tax-free havens that they're not paying any taxes on. And by 2020, given that 1% of the world's wealthiest have made the largest gains in wealth over all other socioeconomic demographics in the last decade, this figure should now be well over 40 trillion that they've squirreled away. So many have trouble understanding how much wealth 40 trillion constitutes, so let me explain it to you. Nearly half the world's population still earns $5.50 a day or less. Even if we took the upper tier of this population that earns the top amount of $5.50 a day, and this group saved half of the money they earned, which is an exorbitantly high percentage of savings per earnings, given roughly 253 working days a year. Guess how many days it would take for 1 million of these people to earn not the total wealth of the world's richest, but only the portion of the wealth that the world's richest have hidden from tax collectors? Would you guess 25 years, 50 years, or even 100 years? Even if a million of the world's poor people saved half their income for 10,000 years, they still wouldn't have the same wealth that the world's wealthiest have squirreled away in tax havens. Not their total wealth, just the wealth they've squirreled away to hide from tax collectors. So even if 1 million of the world's poor people saved half their income for 10,000 years, they wouldn't have that same amount of wealth. You know how many years it would take them? It would take them 57,492 years of continuous work, saving half of all their earnings just to accumulate the $40 trillion that the rich likely have hidden in offshore tax havens. 57,492 years. So one thing I want to mention real quickly, if this video runs out, and it's a video I've posted on IGTV, you can watch the full video on my SK Wealth Academy channel, as well as find out what other exclusive content you can receive if you become a patron by going to patreon.com/SK Wealth Academy. Okay, now that I got the PSA out of the way, let's get back to this video. So this should give you an idea of how much more wealth the 1% of the wealthiest people have in the world than the poor. So it's so ludicrous to believe the nonsense garbage statistic that earning $34,000 a year places you in the top 1% of all income earners on planet Earth due to the lack of context that surrounds this statement. Furthermore, to be among the top 1% income earners in the United States, of which a majority of those $34,000 a year earners reside, one would need to earn more than $718,000 or $718,766 a year in 2017, according to U.S. Social Security data, which speaks to the vast differences in purchasing power in different nations around the world, and the reason why stating a $34,000 annual income places someone in the top 1% of all income earners in the world is an empty calorie, meaningless statement. A second reason why this statistic is so meaningless is because the wealthy often hide their income too, as should be apparent from the $40 trillion or so of wealth they've squirreled away in tax-free shelters around the world. Thirdly, the fact that the U.S. Census Bureau reported that a salary of $250,000 would place you in the top 1% of all U.S. income earners in 2008, as opposed to the more than $718,000 a year that was reported by who was it? I'll find this in a second. Oh, the U.S. Social Security Administration data in 2017 only reveals again how bogus many of these income statistics may be. The reason I chose the Social Security income stat of needing to earn more than $718,000 a year to be in the top 1% of income earners in the United States versus the U.S. Census data stat of just $250,000 is because U.S. Census Bureau data often relies on self-reporting of income, which of course is far less accurate than data extracted from the Social Security Agency, which is based off of tax returns and whatnot. So fourthly, the normal bell curve of income distribution that is a sign of a healthy economy has long been destroyed in place of a hockey stick, which looks like this, hockey stick-like income distribution in many developed nations across the world, when a healthy economy, which President Trump continually states America possesses, which it does not, would have the largest base of middle-class income earners with more tapered ends and smaller groups of wealthy and poor, and finally very small groups of very wealthy and very poor people. So in other words, you know, that bell curve you've seen, the majority would be the middle class, then you have a smaller group of wealthy and poor people, and then a very small class of uber wealthy and uber poor people. But now it looks like a hockey stick, the distribution. And that's not only in America, but that's in most developed nations across the world. So thanks to the misanthropic effects of fractional reserve fiat currency monetary system, which you can go watch and be astounded by the differences in the cost of living in the I did the 1980s, mid 1980s versus now. You can find that video on my channel, again, SK Wealth Academy 2 YouTube channel. So it's not SK Wealth Academy, but SK Wealth Academy 2. And again, every nation in the world, not just the US, has suffered from a backwards migration of the middle class into the poor that has yielded a growing poor class, a drastically reduced shrinking middle class, and a progression of the wealthy class into progressively wealthier classes, and a progression of the uber wealthy class into the obscenely wealthy class. And this has produced a hockey-like income distribution in many nations, whereby it's produced a segment of the top 1% of income earners that spans an enormous level of income from highest to lowest. So therefore, if one must earn $718,000 a year to qualify for the bottom end of the top 1% of income earners in America, if you're earning $34,000 per year and live in a developed nation, you most likely are struggling economically quite a bit. And even though the purpose of reporting the statistic that you belong among the top 1% income earners in the entire world, if you earn $34,000 or more, is to deceive you into thinking that you should not be questioning the global monetary system and to remain obedient to the very misanthropic money masters and bankers that run this world and entangle this world in endless, needless wars that kill millions and create millions of more refugees. So according to the Internal Revenue Service in 2016, the top 1% of US income earners reported more than a cumulative $2.3 billion of income, meaning that obviously there are literally hundreds of thousands of Americans that were reporting more than $10 million of annual income. Obviously, this means that the top 1%, or at least, I'm just like, really just spitballing figures off the top of my head, and that one, I mean, that figure is real, that the top 1% of US income earners reported more than cumulative $2.3 billion of income. But I said that literally means hundreds of thousands of Americans are reporting more than $10 million of annual income. To be safe, let's say that literally means hundreds of thousands of Americans are reporting more than $1 million of annual income. Because this means that the top 1% of income earners in the world must range from $34,000 a year at the bottom end to earning hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Consequently, it is really deceptive and insulting to state to anyone that earns $34,000 a year in a developed nation that you belong in this rarefied group of income earners around the world called the 1%ers. To understand that cumulatively, the top 1% of American earners earned more than $2 trillion in 2016. Consider the enormous differences between a million, a billion, and a trillion seconds. A million seconds represents slightly less than 11.6 days. A billion seconds represents 31.7 years, and a trillion seconds represents 31,710 years. So the difference between a million seconds, 11.6 days, and a trillion seconds is 31,710 years. Remember, the 1% of top US income earners reported in 1 year a cumulative amount of $2.3 billion worth of income. So again, another way to elucidates that someone that earns $34,000 a year should not be described as belonging in the top 1% of income earners in the world is to compare his or her earnings to someone that earns $50 million per year, of which there are many thousands around the world that qualify, that also belong in the category of the top 1% of income earners in the world. Now I was just thinking, right, that That figure does not sound correct to me, that the top 1% of US income earners reported more than a cumulative $2 trillion of income. Could that be correct? Because this was just in 2016. I'm going to go double fact check that to make sure that I did not misquote that. And if I did misquote that, just go to my YouTube channel and I'll put the correction in the video description below. If there's no correction, then that is the correct answer. But just, that seems like a staggering amount, and it might be correct. It may indeed very well be correct, but I'm thinking maybe I mistransposed that number, but I will let you know in the YouTube description. So go to my YouTube channel, check out this final video. And again, so I wanted to discuss that if we are to compare someone that earns $34,000 a year to another person in that 1% category of top income earners in the world that earns $50 million a year, of which there are many thousands around the world that yet are at the upper tier of this 1% of income earners, just to earn the same earnings as this other person in 1 year that earns $50 million. That's also in the same top 1% of income earners in the world category. The person earning $34,000, guess how many years they would have to work to earn that same income that this person earns in 1 year in the same 1% category? Okay, I'm going to tell you, it's 1,470 years and 6 months. So do you really believe it is intellectually honest to include people in the same category that it would have to work for more than 1,470 years to earn the same income that someone else makes in 1 year? Of course not. This again is due to the obscene inequality of wealth that now exists in the world today, and the hockey stick-like distribution of income and wealth in nearly every nation in the world, in which the middle class is getting destroyed by central banking, fractional reserve banking system. So to leave you with one last analogy that clearly delineates the dishonesty of this reported statistic that is intended to deceive people that earn $34,000 a year to feeling good about their situation, even if they're struggling economically because they live in a nation in which the cost of living is very high. Imagine if the same hockey-like distribution existed in an Olympic event like the 100-meter sprint, as far as the times are concerned. So imagine if the majority of the world required 16 or more seconds to run the 100-meter sprint, but that only 1%, this is hypothetical, I know that there's far more than 1% of the entire world's population that could run the 100 meters in less than 15 seconds, but for the sake of this argument, to get that hockey-like distribution, imagine only 1% of the world could run the 100 meters in less than 15 seconds, and because you happen to be able to run the 100 meters in 14.85 seconds, you bragged about how you are among the fastest 1% of the people in the entire world. Would you really think you belonged in the same class as Usain Bolt, who ran that same 100 meters and who would be in the top 1% of fastest 100-meter runners in the world in 9.58 seconds? Because at 14.85 seconds, Usain Bolt would leave you in the dust and make you look like you were crawling. Would you deceive yourself still by telling all your friends you could run the 100 meters as fast as the top 1% of humans on planet Earth? But understand that absence of context, that statistic is meaningless, and this is how we need to view many statistics about income that are being spread and propagated by a lot of demagogues out there, including the one that earning $34,000 or more places you in the top 1% of all income earners in the world. So stay thirsty, my friends, about your curiosity levels, because if you're not curious, you'll never learn the truth about things in this world. Stay tuned for my 20-course online academy, skwealthacademy, in which I devote an entire course just to critical thinking skill development, and another entire course into finding meaning in life, because I think our societal definitions of wealth is incorrect. Our societal definitions of success are incorrect, and the things that we pursue to extract happiness and sustainable happiness for the duration of our lives is incorrect. So my academy is going to be very, very different than many schools around the world. In fact, I think it's going to be the only school in the entire world that discusses subjects in depth like this and gives you the exercises to apply the knowledge you learn to be able to find more meaning in your life and to build a happier, wealthier life. So stay tuned. Always remember, remain intensely curious. Subscribe to my free newsletter at malamalam.com/WordPress. Go to the link below in the YouTube description. And please do give this video a like and also comment below because I would love to hear your thoughts about this particular video. And as always, until next time, remain intensely curious. Peace and bless up.